we had to cut, obviously, when you come to a vent. Just cut it off and then start again here. Keep going. Also, this is where the fun begins. Here I've loaded the nail gun. You see how you load them with nails. You open up the little thing there. Load them with these staples and shut it. This is where the job gets going a lot faster. Well, it's taken us probably 2 hours to get this far, to get everything ready. Now these boards are going to go in. We'll probably get maybe 2 minutes per row or something. It's really going to go pretty fast now. Notice now that the nail gun just fits. We get in here close. There's like a step in the nail gun right there. You want to put that right on top of the tongue of the board, like so. Okay, and then can you grab my? Oh, here's the hammer. Here's the hammer. Give them a wide back up some so they get a good view of this. You just put it up tight like that, and just give it a smack. A pretty hard one. If there's a gap in here, you hit it harder. If it's already tight, you don't have to hit it that hard. But there's a little bit of a gap, so I'm going to give it a good whack. There we go. And if you look, go a little close up there. See how the staple went right in above the tongue. And you want to do this every, I don't know, every foot or so, maybe 10 inches. Put another few of them in here so you can see how that works. Now before I put the next one in, I want to make sure this is tapped in. So a regular hammer is better for this. Tapped in, tight that way too. So these gaps are as minimal as possible. And set it in. You want to start your first nail. Notice how I put one within, I don't know, a few inches, 3 inches from the end. Same thing here. Just keep it near the ends of the boards. Alright, here we are in the doorway where I was talking about used to be carpet. I took off the old strip and put in this new. It's just one board going sideways. As you can see, the tongue fit into these boards, and then now the groove is over here, and all the rest of our boards are going to fit right into that. The tongue's not sticking out, so you can't use the tool here. You just face nail it, you can see right there, with finish nails, just like we did the first 2 rows. Face nail that down. And then as you install the other boards, make sure you give them a good tap this way to tighten them against this board, to tighten this gap up. Just a progress update. That's where we were when we started. Moving back. Lots and lots and lots of rows. And you only have maybe 10 rows left to go. You can see with all the junk in the room, but this hardwood floor is looking pretty nice. From the tips and techniques department, you notice you try to hit here, it won't go because this board is bowed upward. That is, needs to be pushed down before it's tapped in. So you're tempted to just put your hand down on it like this and tap it in, which is fine, but do be careful that you're pressing right on the end. Don't put your hand, don't put your palm over the crack, because when you're tapping it in, you can pinch your hand. And I'm, of course, too much of a professional to do that, but I did want to show, for example, this is what it would look like if you pinched your hand on a board. So just be careful of that. So in this case, since I don't have enough hands, I'm holding the camera. I'll just use my foot and tap. 2 things I'd like to point out here. One, I ran out of rosin paper and I had about 2 feet left to go, so I just put down some old computer paper. Maybe my little corner will be a little squeaky, but oh well, it's not worth going out and buying a whole nother roll of paper. Let's see. Also, here we've come to an end of a row, and we're looking for a piece, roughly a foot long. What you could do is take a piece that's if you don't find the exact right size, you take a piece about that long and then cut it off. You cut off that much on that end and then scoot it down and stick it in. That's one option. And you waste, say 3 or 4 inches of wood. Option 2, which I prefer, is to get a longer piece of wood like this, that's this long, cut it off right where you need it, exactly where you need it, and then take the other end and take it down and start the next row down there with it. So you end up with no scrap at all, row after row. One other tip, when you're cutting wood on the chop saw, you'd be tempted to lay it in this way. Don't. Put it face down. If you put it face up, it chips the surface. If you put it face down, it doesn't. Another tip, if you obviously want to put these boards in like so, and then tap them to close the gap here, but you can't get a hammer back here to tap. So what you do on the last board is put it in at an angle, just like this, and then tap right here. Keep tapping hard, and it pretty much closes up the gap pretty well. That's about the best you can do, unless you want to get an angle bar back here. I think they make special hardwood bars that'll hook on here. You can tap with a hammer there, but I've gotten pretty good joints doing it this other way. It's a very sad moment in hardwooding when you come to the last row that you can do with the nail gun. Okay, here we are doing this last few rows. It's going to turn out to be 5 rows total that we have to do by hand. Can't use the nail gun anymore because it won't fit in against the wall. So what you have to do is put nails in like this to hold it in at 45-degree angle. You're supposed to pre-drill, which I'll do right now, pre-drill holes. And then tap the board in as usual. Then start putting in our nails like so. Now, with this hammer, you can't get the nails completely gone down into the tongue, so you got to use a punch to drive them below the surface. Okay, now, if the board, as this one is kind of gapped out, the nail gun allowed you to slam that home. So what you have to do is basically pile up a bunch of boards, quite a few boards, and then put another board sideways. Kind of like so. You're gonna need a few more to do this, but you end up with a pry bar basically, and you end up prying this board into position. One more board, maybe I can show this. You end up prying this board basically like this. Push hard enough, put this into position, close the gap, and then drive that nail in with the hammer. And you have to do that for the next 5 rows. Here's another way to get rid of a small gap. See, there's a tiny little paper thickness gap right there. So what I've got is a board against the wall so we don't punch through the drywall as we do this. A bunch of boards stacked up, and this sort of a lever bar goes to pry this board in, and that little tapping block right there. So as I tap this block right here, see how it moves the lever bar and then slowly tightens that gap, and then you'll be able to put a nail in it. If I tap too much more, I notice my boards are going to pop up, but keep a foot on that maybe, and then tap, tap, tap. You can see the gap is now gone, and we're ready to drive a nail right there. We're going to take a look at that again. Finally, we're at the last row. Typically on the last row, since you can't drive a nail in at an angle, you drill a hole right in the face of the board like so, close to the edge, so that it ends up getting covered by the shoe mold, or this quarter round type molding. It's going to go over that when it's in place. Since I'm so close to the edge, I'm about maybe an inch away, and I'm not going to add a little strip. If you need to, you can. If you're half a board away, you have to take a table saw and cut a strip so you have half a board to put in there. Luckily, I'm close enough. And what I'm going to do is I've pre-drilled holes not on the face of the board, but right in the tongue of the board, like this. You can see the nail going through. So I actually drilled right through the tongue of the board like that. And there you can see I'm going to tighten these up and then nail in through the tongue and all the way down, all the way along the board. And again, tightening is something as simple as whatever works. You can get a board in there, and then I maybe drive a screwdriver in there and turn it, or whatever it takes to kind of tighten up this gap, and then hammer down that nail. Do all this all the way down, and we're done. And there it is, done. The last row is in. You can see we now have a beautiful hardwood floor, edge to edge. And now it's time to put the trim back on. We have the old trim, which I managed to save, laid against the wall. You push it in kind of tight. As you can see, it leaves gaps because it's not 3/4 of an inch thick, so there's some gap down there. Anyway, take that and shoot that in with a finish nailer, or you can just use finishing nails if you don't have a finish nailer. And then after that, you have to put shoe mold, or it's just really quarter round or something like quarter round. Lay that out right in on top, and then so that covers that last little gap that we have. And then we'll hit that with a littler nail gun. This is called a brad nailer. Shoots about an inch long nail. Just pop that in right there. And that finishes up the trim. Then of course, as you do with trim, you can put a bead of caulk right along here to seal it to the wall and make it look nicer. Then of course, you want to put a little putty on the holes, like if a nail went in here, put a little putty on the hole, and then paint it, and it's done. When it's done, it looks something like this. Except this hasn't been painted yet, but you can see the holes are puttied. That's pretty much what it looks like. And here it finally is. We're done. Very nice wall-to-wall hardwood floor. And how long did this take me? I'd say all in all it was about maybe 2 to 3 days. You could take care of this in a weekend if you worked extra long days. Good luck with your hardwood floor.